So today I have a lot of acrylic supplies out because I thought I would share what somebody who's just starting out with acrylic painting might want to pick up or really needs to pick up so that they can start with their acrylic painting journey. Now, you'll go to the art store, there will be racks and racks of different supplies that you can buy. It will feel overwhelming. That's okay. Hopefully this helps narrow down what you want to pick up and helps keep the price down so that you're not spending money on things that you end up not liking. Okay, so the first thing you'll need, of course, is some sort of paint. Now, I've pulled out a student grade line of paint that I used quite extensively, probably for about the first year or so when I started painting acrylics, and it's the Winsor & Newton Galleria. It's nice because it's still decent quality, but it's not quite as good of quality as the Artist brand. However, still pretty decent. There are some, we'll say, lesser quality paint brands that you'll probably really struggle with if you start with it. But if you use a trusted brand like Winsor & Newton, Liquitex also has a student grade brand called Basics, but I used the Galleria quite extensively and was quite happy with it. Although as my painting journey got further down the road, I eventually upgraded to some of the Artist brands. So this is Golden Acrylics. This is an Artist brand and it's Artist quality. So it's going to be more expensive than the Galleria version. So if you happen to have, maybe a bigger budget, maybe you have quite a bit of painting experience in oils or watercolors, or you're already quite skilled at drawing, you might want to skip right to the Artist quality. Now, the difference between a student brand and an Artist quality is the student brand is going to have less pigment, will have more fillers, whereas the Artist quality version will have as much pigment as they can possibly put with the least amount of fillers. So that's the difference, but it's still great to use the Galleria brand or Galleria line because it's so much less expensive. And when you're just starting out, just starting to figure out, what do you like about acrylics? How do they work? It's just nicer to practice with something that doesn't feel so expensive. So if you've decided, yes, I'm going to start with the student grade, that's great. But now you have a choice of colors. Now there are a ton of colors. You're not necessarily going to choose exactly the ones that I have here, but think of the color wheel. There's 3 primary colors on the color wheel. You have red, you have yellow, you have blue. I recommend 2 of each primary color. So get a warm leaning and a cool leaning of each. So for the red, I have here my warm leaning is the vermilion hue, so it's a little bit orangier, an orangier red. I would also recommend a cadmium red as your warmer red. For a cool leaning red, I have permanent alizarin crimson here. It's great. I use permanent alizarin crimson a lot, but you could use like a quinacridone magenta. So it's a little bit more of a purplier red. For your yellows, I have cadmium yellow pale hue here, but for your warm yellow, you could use cadmium yellow pale, but I would recommend probably a cadmium yellow medium because this is on the color wheel. It's probably a little bit towards the cooler side, but just think of cadmium yellow and you'll do okay. And then for the cool yellow, the lemon yellow. And this is more of a green yellow. So it doesn't necessarily look green, but it's more green leaning than the cadmiums. If you pick up a yellow that has, a little bit of warmth to it, like the cadmium yellow medium or dark, you'll probably be able to tell a little bit better in the store. And then for the blues, the 2 blues, so cool blue, I have here cerulean blue. That's a cool blue. You could also use one of the phthalo blues. That's also a very cool blue. And then for the warm blue, I have ultramarine blue here. You could also use a cobalt blue. And then absolutely get yourself a tube of titanium white. Titanium white is a workhorse for most painters. It's very opaque, which means you can't really see through it, but you can use it to lighten any of the other paints that you have. So you'll use a lot of it. And now I've added an extra color. This is green, sap green to be specific, because you might just see some colors that you like. And you can definitely just pick up a color you like, because it's just, that's part of the fun of painting is you like a color and you pick it up and you see how it works. And I've chosen sap green because, for one, I like sap green. I like having a tube of green that I don't have to mix between, blue and yellow. And I know tons of people really like sap green. So if you see any tubes you just like and you can fit it into your budget, then consider picking it up. Okay, so we've talked a bit about paint. Next up, you need something to paint on. So I have a few things here. So here I have a canvas panel. It's just a little one and it's thin. And depending on the store that you're shopping at, a lot of art stores and even craft stores will sell canvas panels, like economy or student versions. And they're not that expensive. They also don't take up too much room in your storage. So these are really, really nice to paint on as a beginner. I also brought, this hasn't been unwrapped, so it's a little bit shiny, so hopefully the glare is okay. This is a traditional canvas. It's one that it's academic level 1, which means it's, probably more of a student grade, but still decent to work with. And you can get these at like Michael's or other craft stores, and they often go on sale. And you can see, just focus that a little bit better, you can see there's a little bit of depth, whereas the canvas panel is really, really thin in comparison. And one more option. I used extensively when I was first learning how to paint acrylics. This is the canvas pad, and it is a pad of canvas. So it's like a pad of paper, but instead it's canvas. So you can paint with that. It's a lot less expensive than the canvas panels or the canvas itself. So if you just want to paint and paint and paint, don't really know what you're going to produce, you can definitely try this. I was quite happy with using it for the years that I've used it. You can, if you find that you've printed something or painted something absolutely amazing and you go, great, it's not on a canvas panel or on a canvas itself or canvas frame, you can just frame these. So that works really, really nicely. Okay, what's next? Okay, the third thing you'll need, paintbrushes. Now I brought a random selection of, well, not random, but a small selection of inexpensive paintbrushes that I have used over the years. And I specifically chose a couple of different brands. Now, when I very first started painting with acrylic, I picked up a few different of the Princeton Snap. So Princeton has a ton of different lines of paintbrushes, but their Princeton Snap line is really nice and inexpensive. You can get them in sets. These ones are also Princeton Snaps, just a little bit different. I think these ones came in a set and this one I bought individually, but they're really nice and affordable. So look for some affordable ones. The nice thing about the Princeton Snaps is they're quite a nice smooth bristle. You'll find over time that as you use different paintbrushes and test out different paintbrushes, you'll find what you like depending on what you're aiming to paint. And the other brand that I brought, this one was a gift, and it's an Opus brand, and Opus is a store in BC, British Columbia. So it's a little bit less expensive, potentially, to purchase a store brand. I don't actually know the price of these ones, but they are quite handy and useful, and I've used them quite a bit. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the type of paintbrushes that I recommend, that if you're just a beginner, you don't really know what you're going to paint, types of paintbrushes that you could consider picking up. Now, this Princeton one it's called a flat. And it's kind of like a rectangle-y shape. This one is nice. It's pretty kind of general use, I'd say. Depending what, you're not going to get something really, really, I'd say impressionistic probably out of it, although it depends on your skill level. But it does it's nice middle ground. This one is also, I believe it's a flat. It might be a bright, but pick up something that is like a square shape for the bristles or a rectangle, and that'll get you started to see if you like it. Another one that's not bad for beginners is, this is a filbert. Let's see, I'm trying to get it in focus. And it's called a filbert because I think it's shaped a little bit like an almond, so it's rounded, but it's also kind of narrow. So you can get nice, somewhat wide applications of paint, but you can also do somewhat thinner lines. And the second last one is this angle shader. An angle shader isn't too bad either. It's basically another flat that is on an angle. And the last one I will show, this is a very small brush. This is good if you want to paint a lot of detail. You want to go with a nice small one. And this is a small round, which allows me to paint my signature because it's nice and tiny. So if you're wanting to paint a lot of detail, pick up something really, really small like this. And I recommend getting probably a set of paintbrushes, but also kind of a small, medium, large. There are numbers on paintbrushes, like this one is a 4 and this one is a 10, but they aren't necessarily consistent across lines, and it also depends what you're trying to paint. So if you want to go with something really heavily detailed, get 3 different small brushes. So get something like this tiny and maybe a couple sizes up and then a couple more sizes up. If you want something to paint something that's really loose, really abstract, go with big paintbrushes. So go with something at least this wide, maybe something a little bit smaller and something that's even bigger. So just don't try not to get just one paintbrush. And that's what's nice about buying in a set, is it kind of gives you a little bit of a variety to play with. Like this one, it gives you the really tiny one, it gives you kind of a medium one and a larger one. And then it depends, are you trying to paint a huge painting, which as a beginner can be quite challenging. So you're probably painting like something smaller like this. So if you start with one this size, it's not too big because you can put wide applications of color on. But then if you're painting something really tiny, like a little beetle on a petal or whatever, you can do that with the tiny one as well. Okay, so those are the 3 main things that you really definitely absolutely need. And let's move into some things that you might actually have potentially lying around, we'll say. You'll need something, a bucket. This is what you'll put your rinse water in. And this bucket is just an old bucket that honey came in, and I just use it for my rinse water. But if you are going to use an old bucket like this, just make sure that once you start using it for paint or your art, don't put it back where you would use it for food or anything like that again. You don't want to contaminate your food with your art supplies. Okay, you'll also need some sort of a towel. Now this is not necessarily necessary, but it will be really handy because you have your rinse bucket, you rinse off your paintbrush, and then it's sopping wet. You don't want to put it right back into your paint because that can make your paint a different consistency. So rinse it off and then just dry it off. I have a reusable tea towel here. This is like an old flour sack tea towel. So it's cotton, so it's nice and fairly absorbent. But some people just use paper towels. But it's nice to have something reusable. let's see. You'll need something that is a palette. And a palette is something you squeeze your paint onto so that you can then paint with your paint. So this is a palette paper pad. So this one comes with 40 sheets, and it has one side that has this thin plastic layer so that the paint doesn't seep through to the next layers. And I can, squeeze out a bit of paint, and then I can paint and mix. And then once I'm done, I can just toss away the sheet. But if you want something it's nice and convenient because it's disposable, and once you're done with it, you just toss it out, so it's no fuss. But if you want something reusable, there are some palette options as well. Okay. A pencil. This isn't necessary. You might already have a pencil lying around. This is an HB pencil, so kind of like what you used in school to do your, just your, classes in school. But this is an artist quality one. It's Staedtler Mars Lumograph. It's just handy to have some sort of a pencil to do your initial sketch of whatever you're going to paint. Not necessary. You don't necessarily need to buy an artist brand, but it is handy to have a pencil for most people. Okay, and the last thing that I will show you that is handy to pick up if you're going to do some acrylic painting this is going to be interesting to show because my camera is really close to it. This is a tabletop easel. So you can see I don't know if you can see. This is directly above the tabletop easel. I'll just fold it up a little bit so it can lay flat. But basically it's an easel that I can just, paint away. I don't have to worry about getting paint on it because, it's just how it happens with an easel. But it also, you can ensure your painting's at a nice angle and a comfortable height when you have an easel. It also, you don't need an easel. You can just paint. If you have something protecting your tabletop, you can just paint like that and paint away. That's no problem. Just make sure you have something painted on it. But an easel is nice because it tilts your canvas up and you can work this way. And also if you are working directly on your tabletop, especially if you're using a canvas panel or painting the edges of your canvas, just make sure your paint doesn't dry to the table or to the newspaper that you're using because it will get stuck and it will rip up and cause issues with possibly both your painting and the table itself. And essentially that's it. That's what you need, or what you somewhat need, to start painting with acrylics. And as you learn what you like, you might find, these paintbrushes are absolutely perfect for your painting, the paintings that you want to do. But then you might find, no, these ones, they're too smooth. So you want to be able to paint something a little bit more textured. So you might pick up a paintbrush that has more texture to it rather than a smoothness to it. You might find, oh no, I really want to go with the most detailed painting. So these paintbrushes might be just too big for you. So, or the bristles might be too large. So you might just go for really, really tiny paintbrushes, things like that. And as you go through your painting journey, you'll just find what you really, really like. You might find the Galleria brand. They're great for years and years. Or you might find, like I did one day, where it was just one day I was painting and I just got so frustrated with how much paint I had to apply to get the amount of pigment and color on the canvas that I just eventually said, okay, from now on, I'm only using the artist quality brand. So it'll just depend on your artist journey and what you like and what you find.